When engineers first saw these buildings, many thought the footage was fake. Hotels that rotate, transform, think for themselves, and operate decades ahead of anything seen in the West. China isn't just building hotels, it's building the future of cities. Join us, and let's explore China's futuristic hotels that shocked American engineers. Let's go.
Number 13, the Tianzi Hotel. The Tianzi Hotel is 3 Chinese gods standing 41 stories tall, and every floor is functional hotel space. Fu, Lu, and Shao rise into the sky with their robes flowing down the facade and their faces staring out over the landscape. This is figurative architecture taken to a level that seems impossible until you're standing in front of it, realizing it's completely real. The gods' garments are guest rooms. Their heads contain penthouses. Their arms wrap around structural corners. Every window placement follows the contours of divine bodies dressed in traditional robes. The design is so audacious it borders on absurd, except somehow it works perfectly. At night, lights trace the contours of the 3 figures, and illuminated deities dominate the skyline, like mythology stepped out of ancient stories and decided to offer room service to modern travelers. Western architecture rarely attempts figurative buildings at this scale. Mount Rushmore carved faces into a mountain, but nobody tried to make those faces functional interior space. The Tianzi Hotel takes the concept further than anyone thought possible. Chinese engineers had to figure out how to make human-shaped structures meet building codes designed for rectangular towers. How do you run plumbing through a giant rope? How do you ensure structural integrity when your building has arms? Every engineering manual said this couldn't work. They built it anyway and created something that exists nowhere else on Earth. Mythology made literal at massive scale, functioning as futuristic hospitality. This is what happens when cultural heritage collides with modern construction and refuses to compromise on either vision.
Number 12. The horizontal skyscraper. Raffles City, Chongqing breaks physics in a way that makes structural engineers lose sleep. 4 towers rise 350 meters into the sky, and then someone decided to connect them with a bridge. Except this isn't a bridge. It's an entire skyscraper turned sideways and suspended in the air. The structure is called the Crystal, and it's 300 meters long, weighing thousands of tons, floating between towers like someone hit the rotate button in a video game and forgot to hit undo. This thing stretches across the skyline with swimming pools, restaurants, and observation decks all hanging in midair. Walk through it and your brain keeps screaming that you shouldn't be this high up in something this horizontal. The engineering required to make this work is insane. American builders looked at the plans and said the wind forces alone would rip it apart. Chinese teams built it anyway, using advanced dampening systems and flexible connection points that let the structure move without breaking. At night, the crystal lights up and becomes this glowing horizontal slash across the sky. You can see it from everywhere in Chongqing, a flying building that shouldn't exist but does. The hotel rooms and the towers below get a view that's completely unique. You look out your window and there's a skyscraper floating past at eye level. Western architecture builds up or builds out. This project builds sideways at heights that make helicopters nervous. The Chinese construction industry just proved that gravity is more of a suggestion than a rule.
I'm going to ask you a simple question. Are you a naturally curious person? If you're watching, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. This space is made for people like us. To ensure you're always part of this community and receive all our latest discoveries, you just need to do one thing: subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to stay connected with us. Okay, now that you're part of our Legion of the Curious, let's move on to the next item.
Number 11. The Pixel Building, the Yinchuan Museum. The Yinchuan Museum of Contemporary Art doubles as a hotel, and it looks like someone built a structure out of giant colored pixels. The entire building is covered in protruding boxes that stick out at different lengths, creating this three-dimensional texture that changes depending on where you stand. Each box is a different color: reds, blues, yellows, greens, all scattered across the facade in a pattern that looks random but is carefully calculated. During the day, shadows from the protruding boxes create constantly changing patterns as the sun moves. At night, lights inside each box turn the whole building into a glowing grid of colors that looks like a computer screen built at architectural scale. This is digital aesthetics translated directly into physical construction. American architects use color as accent. Chinese designers here used color as structure. Every protruding box serves a purpose, either for interior space or for the building's environmental systems. The pixel effect isn't decoration, it's functional design that happens to look like tomorrow's architecture arrived early. Stand far away and the building looks like abstract art. Get close and you realize each pixel is room-sized, with windows and actual interior space. The design messes with your depth perception in ways that make photography difficult. Every angle looks different. Every distance reveals new patterns. This is what hotels look like when video game graphics inspire real-world construction.
Number 10. The Holographic Hotel. The Shimao Wonderland Hotel uses projection mapping to make the quarry walls around it come alive with holographic images. The building sits at the bottom of an abandoned quarry, like the Intercontinental Wonderland, but adds a layer of digital technology that transforms the rock faces into screens. At night, projections turn the stone walls into waterfalls, forests, galaxies, whatever the programmers decide. You sit in your room and watch the quarry transform around you through the window. The Chinese developers didn't just build a hotel in an unusual location. They made the location part of the entertainment. Giant projectors hidden throughout the structure cast images onto the quarry walls, creating this immersive environment that changes every night. One evening, the walls show underwater scenes. The next night, it's outer space. The technology and architecture merged into a single experience. Western hotels use screens and displays inside rooms. This hotel turned the outside environment into the display. The quarry walls become a 360-degree wraparound screen hundreds of feet tall. The projections interact with the natural texture of the rock, creating effects impossible on flat surfaces. Water appears to flow down actual stone grooves. Light seems to emanate from cracks in the rock face. The holographic images gain depth and texture from the irregular surface they're projected onto, making everything look more real than it should. This is future hospitality, where the building and its environment combine with technology to create experiences that didn't exist before and can't exist anywhere else.
The Yangtze Lake Hotel. 7 traditional Chinese buildings float on water, and they're all connected underwater by tunnels you can walk through. The Yangtze Lake Hotel looks ancient from above, but the engineering underneath is pure future. Each pavilion sits on the lake surface using foundation technology that makes the structures appear weightless. Then someone connected them all with transparent underwater corridors, so guests can walk between buildings while fish swim overhead. You descend stairs from one pavilion, and suddenly you're in a glass tunnel under the lake, watching aquatic life while you stroll to dinner. The contrast is wild. Traditional architecture on top, futuristic engineering below. Chinese designers merged old aesthetic with new technology so smoothly that most guests don't realize how advanced the systems are until they're walking underwater. American resorts put walkways over water. This project put walkways underwater and made the journey between buildings more interesting than the destinations. At night, lights in the underwater tunnels create this glowing network beneath the surface. From above, the lake looks normal. From below, it's a transportation system that belongs in a science fiction story about underwater cities. The structural engineering required to make buildings float on water while maintaining underground connections is incredibly complex. The waterproofing alone would make most construction companies give up. Chinese teams solved every problem and created a hotel where half the experience is invisible from the surface.
Number 8. The Sunrise Kempinski Hotel. This hotel is 8 massive spheres connected in a chain rising from a lake like they're emerging from another dimension. Each sphere is enormous, each one perfectly smooth and gleaming. All of them linked together by bridges that look like umbilical cords connecting space stations. This is bubble architecture taken to a scale that breaks your sense of what's possible. The spheres aren't just round, they're pristine geometric perfection. During the day, they reflect the sky and water in ways that make them seem to disappear and reappear depending on the light. At night, each orb glows from within, and the whole structure becomes this chain of luminous planets floating on darkness. Chinese engineers had to solve completely unique problems to make this work. How do you anchor 8 giant spheres to a lake bed? How do you connect them so guests can move between bubbles without the bridges swaying? How do you make spherical rooms that don't feel claustrophobic?
Western architecture rarely attempts sphere construction at this scale because the challenges seem too complex. Spheres are expensive, they're difficult to furnish, they create odd interior spaces. The Sunrise Kempinski embraced every challenge and turned limitations into features. The curved walls became selling points, the odd room shapes became unique experiences. The reflections in the water double the visual impact, 16 spheres total when you count the mirror images below, all glowing with otherworldly light that makes the whole resort look like it was built by a civilization that evolved past corners and straight edges.
The Grand Lisboa in Macau is a 47-story golden lotus flower that decided to become a skyscraper. This building takes the concept of a flower blooming, the entire structure covered in gold-tinted glass that makes the building look like it's made from precious metal. This isn't subtle design. This is futurism at full volume, demanding attention from everyone within miles. At night, lights run up each petal, and the gold reflects every color in the spectrum. The whole building transforms into a glowing beacon that looks like a signal from an advanced civilization trying to communicate through pure spectacle. The design shifts as you move around it. From one direction, it's a flower. From another angle, it's a crown. From above, it's a starburst of impossible geometry. Every surface curves deliberately, every edge engineered for maximum visual impact. American casino architecture tends toward themed environments in conventional building shells. Vegas has pyramids and castles, but they're basically boxes with decorative exteriors. The Grand Lisboa is structure as pure expression. The building shape serves the design instead of the other way around. Chinese architects weren't afraid to make something that dominates the skyline and refuses to blend in. You can see this golden lotus from miles away, rising above everything else and glowing like architecture from a world where subtlety died and replaced itself with pure visual power. The Dragon Valley Hotel. They carved a hotel into the side of a mountain and made it look like a dragon protecting its treasure. The Dragon Valley Hotel in Tiannan Mountain isn't built on the landscape. It's carved into the rock face itself, hugging cliffs that drop straight down for hundreds of meters. The structure follows the natural contours of the mountain, with platforms that jut out over empty space, supported by engineering that seems impossible when you're standing on it. Glass walkways extend from the rooms straight out into nothing. You step onto them, and there's just air and a 1,000-foot drop below your feet. The hotel blends into the rocks so completely that from a distance, it's almost invisible. Then you get closer and realize the whole thing is there, clinging to the cliff like some creature that evolved to live on vertical surfaces. Chinese engineers didn't just build on difficult terrain, they made the difficulty the entire point. Every room has floor-to-ceiling windows facing outward into the valley. You wake up floating above clouds, with mountains surrounding you on all sides. Western hotels in mountain regions sit at the base or on top. This one hangs off the side, because the engineers looked at a vertical cliff face and saw prime real estate. The construction process was wild. Everything had to be lifted by helicopter or carried up by workers on foot. No roads, no trucks, just human determination and engineering skill applied to a location most developers would have rejected as impossible.
Number 5. The Sheraton Huzhou. The Sheraton Huzhou Hot Spring Resort looks like someone took a spaceship, bent it into a horseshoe, and dropped it on a lake. This massive glowing ring sits on the water surface and refuses to follow any traditional architectural rules. No straight lines exist anywhere on this building. Everything curves and flows in ways that make your brain work overtime trying to understand how the structure stays upright. The horseshoe shape wraps around itself in a perfect arc that's all glass and smooth surfaces. During daylight hours, the building acts like a giant mirror, reflecting the sky and water around it. When the sun goes down, the whole thing lights up and becomes this glowing crescent floating on the lake like some kind of luxury space station that decided Earth wasn't so bad after all. American engineers who visit this place spend hours trying to figure out the weight distribution. How do you make something this big appear weightless? How do you curve glass at those angles without it cracking? The Chinese construction teams solved problems that most Western architects didn't even know existed yet. The interior is just as wild. Rooms curve along the outer ring with floor-to-ceiling windows that make you feel like you're inside a bubble floating on water. The swimming pool wraps around the inner curve with infinity edges that blend into the lake. Every detail was designed to make guests forget that buildings are supposed to have corners and straight walls.
This is what hotels look like when you throw out every rule about how structures should behave and start from scratch with nothing but curves and ambition.
Number 4. The Shanghai Wonderland. Deep in Shanghai, there's a building that makes American architects question their entire understanding of construction. The Intercontinental Shanghai Wonderland drops 288 feet straight down into what used to be an abandoned quarry. This isn't some fancy basement or underground parking lot. This is a full luxury hotel carved into the earth, like someone decided the sky was boring and the real future was below our feet. The structure clings to the quarry walls with a glass facade that looks like it's part of the rock itself. Each floor steps down deeper into the darkness, and the whole thing glows like a scene from a movie about underground cities. But here's where it gets wild. 2 entire floors are submerged underwater. You can book a room where the walls are giant aquarium glass and fish swim past while you sleep 288 feet below ground level. The lobby sits at the bottom of this massive pit, with waterfalls cascading down the stone walls around you. At night, the building lights up and transforms the quarry into something that looks like a portal to another dimension. The Chinese engineers who built this didn't just solve the problem of building in a giant hole, they turned the hole into the main attraction. Western hotels build up to show dominance. This one builds down to show mastery. The temperature stays cool year-round because of the earth insulation. The acoustics are incredible because sound behaves differently when you're surrounded by stone walls. Every engineering challenge became a design feature instead of an obstacle.
Number 3. The Banyan Tree Nanjing Garden Expo Resort. This resort proves the future isn't always chrome and hard edges. Sometimes tomorrow looks like architecture that grew from the earth itself instead of being imposed upon it. The resort flows across the landscape in organic curves that make the buildings look alive and breathing. Structures rise and fall with natural terrain in sweeping arcs. Rooflines ripple like waves frozen mid-motion. Water features thread through buildings like the architecture has a circulatory system. This is futuristic design that merged with nature so completely you can't identify where one ends and the other begins. The aesthetic speaks tomorrow's harmony, not dominating the landscape, but becoming part of it, with design language that's utterly modern, yet somehow timeless at once. Curves flow into curves without interruption. Buildings wrap around gardens. Paths dissolve into nature, then re-emerge as structure 20 feet later. At night, soft lighting makes the whole resort glow like bioluminescence from organisms that evolved to produce their own light. This is gentle futuristic vision, where technology and Earth achieved perfect balance instead of fighting for dominance. Every angle reveals another impossible integration. A building that's half stone, half garden. A pool that becomes a lake, that becomes architecture, that becomes landscape again. Chinese designers understood something Western architecture is still learning. The future doesn't have to look alien and cold. Sometimes the most advanced design is the one that remembers humans evolved in nature and still crave connection to living systems. The banyan tree creates spaces that feel futuristic precisely because they refuse to separate from the natural world. This is what hotels look like when the future decides to stop fighting nature and starts dancing with it instead.
The Sanya Beauty Crown Hotel. This hotel complex is so massive that astronauts can see it from space. This circular megastructure rises like a jeweled crown, designed for giants, with crystalline protrusions jutting out at angles that make the whole thing look carved from a single impossible gemstone. The scale rewrites what you think buildings can achieve. This isn't architecture for one city. This is architecture for a civilization that thinks in continents and builds monuments that refuse to be ignored by anyone. The geometric panels and reflective surfaces create symmetry so perfect it looks computer-generated, because it was. Then Chinese construction teams actually built it in physical reality. The sheer size collapses your sense of proportion when you stand near it. At night, the entire crown lights up in shifting, pulsing colors, visible for miles in every direction. This glowing monument to futurism dominates not just the skyline, but the entire concept of what skylines should contain. American developers build big, but rarely build this weird. Scale usually comes with conservative design to ensure market acceptance. The beauty crown threw out that logic and created something faceted like a crystal, massive like a monument, detailed like jewelry, all at dimensions that make your brain struggle to process what your eyes are seeing. Chinese architects decided that if you're going to build something large enough to see from space, you might as well make it look like a crown from a civilization that achieved things we're still trying to understand. This is future-facing design that assumes tomorrow's travelers want experiences that feel genuinely alien instead of comfortably familiar.
Still curious? Then don't stop now. The next mystery is already waiting for you. Just click the video on screen. I saved it just for you. See you there, curious one.